Black fatherhood, my kind of hood. We here to do work, and it sounded good, Sometimes you listen, most times you judge. Try to pick our names, about the mud, Black fatherhood, my kind of hood. We here to do work, and it sounded good, Sometimes you listen, most times you judge. Try to pick our names, about the mud.
And that's what the song's about. It's kind of about, like in the 60s it was the fire hoses. Now we got rubber bullets. What's next?
Thank you again for joining me today and doing an interview with me for the Black Fatherhood podcast.
Appreciate it.
Definitely a pleasure. We met a while back, probably years back. The first time I remember meeting you was with DJ Nomadic.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was in Malden.
Okay.
Malden, Mass. And
you stay in touch with her?
A little bit. Not too much. I saw her right before the pandemic. She did an open mic, and I saw her right before then. But with everything going on, who sees anybody anymore?
Right.
Yeah.
But I think she did a few things during the pandemic, toward the end, But lately, plus with the weather, it's been rough. But.
Yeah, it really has. Definitely. But yeah, I mean, it looks like she's doing good from, you know, what you can tell on social media and all that.
Right.
But yeah, she's doing good. That's the first time I remember meeting you, and she was doing a TV show, and I believe you performed on that TV show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah. That was cool. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. So
Wow, that was the first time? Okay.
I think so. I believe so.
That was interesting, yeah.
First or second time.
I mean, it's interesting. That must have been like 2007, 2008 or something like that.
Yeah, it definitely had to be around that time.
Yeah, and there wasn't too much going on in the country, you know, like it is now.
Right, definitely. It was more under wraps and not filmed as much as it is now.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting times. Like everything's kind of turned upside down or right side up, you know.
Right. Yeah, right side up. I like that a little bit better. That's the, you know, the uprising is right side up.
Yeah.
But so if you don't mind, just, you know, for the purposes of the podcast, if you don't mind introducing yourself a little bit and just saying a little bit about yourself. You know, one reason why I have you on is because you know, you are a Black father.
Yep.
And you know, that's something that, you know, we praise here on the Black Fatherhood podcast. And I would just want to make sure you're properly introduced. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, if that's okay. And just let me know, you know, what you got going on right now, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, man. Well, you know me as Bojah. I'm a musician. I am a father, so I have a 7-year-old son.
Nice.
So I'm proud papa. And you know, I'm also a worker, active in the labor movement. I'm a shop steward on my job at the airport, and also, you know, I'm a political activist, mainly, and especially around you know, police brutality and racism in the U.S. And you know, been pretty busy with that over the last 6 years, you know, along with many others. But it's interesting times because you know, a lot of the music that I write, you know, was about these issues, you know, because it's nothing new really in America. Only thing new is now there's a mass movement that's come into existence now, so it's pretty interesting. But so it's funny, like a lot of the songs I wrote back then, when all this hit, you know, you would think I'd be inspired to write something, but I felt like I had already written it, you know, and I written about it, and I didn't really have much more to say on the topic other than just to be a part of the fight, you know. But you know, we have performed, you know, most recently at a few different rallies and stuff, and
you and
you
your
know, it's
group?
like we just wrote it's just like we wrote
The Insurrection, right?
Yeah, the Insurrection, yeah. So basically, it's kind of a reunion, but because we hadn't been playing in a while, but it was cool to see how it connected with just a brand new audience, you know, new generation.
Yeah, definitely.
And you know, we felt very comfortable in the moment. You know, it's like, you know, we didn't need to write anything new. You know, basically. So it's kind of interesting times, but you know,
did you perform?
It's a struggle.
Like, did you perform on stage at one of the protests, or where was this performance?
Well, it was basically the first kind of, it was like a political concert on Juneteenth.
Okay.
over in Dorchester, and that's where we first performed, and that was really kind of one of the first times anyone performed,
Right.
in the COVID situation. But it was kind of that, it was that gray area between protests, and music, and kind of like stepped into the void. So it was
Nice.
cool, man. It was well received, really big crowd, and it was just good to see, especially some of my other bandmates, really get their props. Work with MC Natural Bliss.
Okay.
I
I've
don't know
heard
if
of
you're
him.
familiar with her. Yeah.
Oh, is that a
And
female? Okay. I've heard the
female,
name.
yeah.
I've never seen
Yeah.
the face.
Yeah, she's badass. She's badass. But she never really, got much attention.
She's local, right? Local to
She's
Boston?
local too, yeah.
Another name, yeah.
But I mean, she's as good as any MC I've heard. And then there's Pelea Set. She's a singer, really great singer. So
Okay.
those were kind of the band's, seen many people in it, come and go. And but it's kind of like a fraternity in some ways. So
Okay.
it's just cool,
Kind of like
supposed to, no, go ahead.
Kind of like one of my favorite groups on The Roots. They like they keep the name, but the band members, may change except for like the core 2, 3, 4, members. But you might have like a
I mean, it's kind of like that. I mean,
like a different musician come through every once in a while.
Yeah, that's why it's called Bojah in the Insurrection, because
right.
Bojah's always gonna be there, but
right.
You don't know what you're gonna get from the insurrection. But we try to set a high bar, so if the insurrection's present, it's gonna be something,
Oh yeah. Nice, I like that.
To catch you. But it is what it is, man. I'm, plan to do more solo stuff too, just because it's easier to pull off than to have a band. So
right, it's hard to get a band together. I've done that a couple times, and it's definitely not easy. Just rehearsal alone is it's hard. It's tough.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of moving parts, and especially if there's no, financial, guarantees around it. It's hard to keep everyone locked in on the mission,
Right.
So
it's tough. Everybody's got jobs.
People want to eat the batter before it's baked,
Yeah.
And then, then if you got a little wind behind you, people want to pull in different directions too. So that's tough too. But in any case, cool thing with this project is, the one kind of unifying theme about it was just it's political music, it's protest music. So
is this a new album?
Keeps people binded together. Not really. I mean, we've got an old album and then just a whole other album we never released. So a lot of it's just material a lot of people haven't heard, but material that we've written and we're familiar with,
Do you think you guys might try to do another or like add another song or something like that if you are releasing a project? Are you releasing like an official project?
There's no real release date plans or anything like that. But I do plan to be. I'm writing right now, so
okay, good.
I'm sure if there's something really timely, we'll try to include it.
Right.
Definitely, there's a lot to speak on, man. It's crazy times, man. Never lived in a time like this.
Yeah. I mean, the closest thing I can think of. I mean, I'm not sure how close we are in age, but the closest thing I can think of in my lifetime is, of course, Rodney King.
Yeah, I mean, Rodney King. Yeah, I mean, that was like a, shockwave throughout the whole country for
People
sure.
have never seen
Rock
that on
country.
video like that.
No, not. And plus the riots, you know, the LA riots. So,
Yeah, that was the crazy part.
like now, post George Floyd, you know, you have things that approach that, but probably even with that, none of them were as ferocious as the LA riot, you know,
Yeah.
to this day, when you think of it. But the difference is, you know, that did, you know, there was national protests all around that, but it wasn't sustained. It didn't create this ongoing movement, you know.
Right.
And I think part of that's just, you know, a lot of it might have to simply do with social media and camera phones and just the fact and the 24-hour news cycle. So
Right.
you just become aware of what's happening in other parts of the country much quicker, and it's all being documented.
Yeah, regular people become journalists.
So that's definitely led, I think, to giving a little more staying power to these fights, you know, because they used to just, they would happen and they would just be isolated to that city.
Right.
And then it would die down and you wouldn't hear about it again. But
Yeah.
this is kind of just bringing everything back, you know. People who've been fighting for years just are back out on the streets. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's the part I like. When people, you know, thought maybe some of these leaders and, you know, just voices have disappeared, but now those voices are saying, you know, they're able to show, hey, now we're still here. We've been fighting this whole time. Thank you for joining our fight. Now let's come together and unify and, you know, try to make this movement as strong as possible. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
it's
saying.
definitely, I think it's kind of like there's a maturation process, man. It's been a long time coming. So, you know, I think part of that too is just having to go through an Obama presidency where a lot of people held out their hopes for the government, the federal government, you know,
Right.
intervening, you know,
That's funny.
in some major way, you know.
Yeah.
And that's not what they got. And, you know, this whole thing happened, you know, erupted under Ferguson, erupted while he was in office, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, interesting. It was interesting how that all
so you
worked
know,
out.
yeah.
Definitely.
So it's hard for, I think it's kind of hard for anyone to get up their hopes up like that again, you know, or at least
Well,
for, you know, a significant section of the population.
definitely.
And,
I mean, a lot of people,
that collective memory starts to set in too. You know, it starts to set a baseline, a new baseline for opinions and attitudes. You know?
That's interesting. So what do you mean by that? Like the collective memory?
I think there's more public cynicism, you know, much more public cynicism and distrust in the ideals, all the myths, all the symbols of Americana. You know?
Okay.
You know, that just all the ideas, you know, that we're in an equal society, that we live in a democracy, even, you know,
that everything's okay now.
Yeah, you know,
right,
or that we're all unified, you know, and it's kumbaya or something like that, or you know, or you know, there's just major question of the legitimacy of the way of things. Because even, you know, the history is under dispute, you know, that's partly, I think, why the Kaepernick thing just
like went sideways, right?
Pressed so many buttons, you know, it pressed so many buttons culturally, because you know, just kind of challenged the basic idea of just pledging your allegiance. It's kind of like suspending your disbelief, you know, like.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've always had a problem with that pledge allegiance to the flag, whatever you call it, anthem. Even as a kid, I've always had a problem with that, and I always felt weird, like pledging allegiance to a flag when I knew so much about the history. Even in, you know, I'd say middle school, high school, you know, they forced us to stand up in class every day and put our hands over our hearts and say that, and it always felt kind of weird when I knew so much. When I knew that there were newspapers like the ones in your background that circulated the country, you know. So it's funny because I'm seeing that because I had that picture. I had that same. I did some Googling and found a whole bunch of old newspapers that's in the Library of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
They have like a whole bunch of that stuff saved just for you to see, and which is funny that people deny so much history when even the U.S. keeps a lot of that history in their books. But
Right.
I saw that picture and I almost put it up on social media, but I was like, nah, I
Oh,
don't think they're
really?
ready.
Nice.
I'm like, I don't think they're ready for this yet. And here you are with it as your background, just calmly, just have it behind you. It's like I love it, honestly. So it's like, yeah, this country and the history behind it, it's been denied for a long time and still kind of being denied, but now it's being threatened. And I think that's a great thing. You know, people kind of were quiet when Obama was in office. People thought, okay, we got a black man in the office. He's going to change things. And of course, you know, he did a little bit here and there. I will say that. I'm not a huge fan of Obama, but I'm not even really a huge fan of politics, but he did a few things here and there, some initiatives for, you know, black and brown boys. But people really they just waited for him to do something. And he, you know, I felt like he just wasn't going to be that guy. The first, you know, black president is just not going to be that guy. The first black anything in any high stature or high office is not going to be the person to change everything. You know, you got to have somebody really, really revolutionary, I think, who, I don't know, who the people choose, not, you know, the government, I'd say, not the electoral college or something like that.
Right.
And I guess, you know, people did choose Obama, but, you know, a lot of people will admit they chose him because he was black. You know, he definitely had a political track record, but a lot of people chose him because he was black. And now with Trump, he's, you know, his presence was able to uproot a lot of the stuff that people like me and you have already known about. You know, people who joined these protests, they may have already known all the unrest, or not unrest, but all the just the undertones, the racial undertones of the country. And I'm glad now, you know, those things have come to fruition, but we need to, you know, we just got to keep it going. A lot of people get scared that the movement will stop and that it'll lose steam, especially after, you know, court cases are closed and people are not put in prison. So you actually said, I saw a little video that you did. I saw a video you did where you were on stage speaking at a protest. And I just want to make sure I quote this right. So you called it a bold statement. This was, I believe, back in July. You said you wanted to make a bold statement and said, George Floyd is dead today because Darren Wilson is out of prison. I don't know if you remember saying that.
Yeah, I mean,
Which I mean, that makes sense. But can you like explain like what you meant by that and, you know, where you were going with that?
yeah, I mean, well, just briefly on that, and you know, we can talk about fatherhood at any time too, but
Oh yeah, I mean, to me, all this stuff connects.
yeah, like it's the main thing you're hearing in the press in relationship to, you know, the protest movement at this point, in terms of, you know, what allegedly people want is to defund the police.
Right.
And we've been arguing all this time, you know, way before, I mean, going back to our inception, that the main demand and the main thing that needs to happen is to prosecute the police.
Yes.
And not just the police, anyone else in government who's part of, you know, covering up these crimes.
Indeed.
Prosecute the prosecutors, you know, the medical examiners, the judges, you know, elected officials, anyone who can be proven to be part of covering up crimes should also be held accountable. Fellow officers,
right,
who didn't commit the crime, they're all accountable if they're part of covering it up. But anyways, the main thing is that, you know, these people need to be charged criminally, and they need to go to jail for their crimes, just like anyone else would.
Right. Not just the black
Now,
officers.
that's not counterposed to people who want to reform the prisons. I mean, the prisons are atrocious. It's one of the most despicable aspects of society today. That's been covered up,
Yes.
kind of open secret, mass incarceration. But that doesn't mean that certain people shouldn't be going to prison, especially killer cops, in my opinion.
Right.
But there's a lot of people who shouldn't be in prison right now too. We're all for that. Like, this, I don't know if you've seen Trial 4 yet, but
No, I
Sean
haven't.
Ellis case pretty. Oh yeah, you gotta watch it. It's
Oh yeah. Microphone went out.
8 episodes, and it's all about Boston. And this brother who was wrongly convicted, he was basically framed up for killing a police officer. And it kind of just exposes the corruption in the Boston Police Department. At least, in the 90s, with pretty much the blind eye of the district attorney. But also, it begs the question what's going on today, and also, some of the stuff is still unresolved. Like Sean Ellis, he's fighting to be exonerated. He's no longer, convicted, but he spent 22 years in jail.
Wow.
So
Sad.
And that's just one person, but in any case.
Trust, I know.
So yeah, the problems, the prison situation is crazy, man.
Yeah, that's what my
family. Probably a lot of us have family, or at least must know somebody who's in prison.
Definitely, that's interesting. That's what my last episode of the podcast was about. Black fatherhood in prisons.
Oh man,
that's kind of it's kind of an interesting segue. Just the effect. Mostly, I would say I talked about the children and the effect on them, but also just the numbers, the amount of Black and brown people in jails and fathers in general as well. It's just sickening, and just the trickling down effect of what that all does to families. It's really horrible. All these people going into jail for small offenses, nonviolent crimes. And I know that's one thing Obama was trying to do, was get people pardoned. But you only have so much time. I mean, 8 years is a long time, but that's another story. But it is what it is. But yeah, it's right. A lot that could have been done. We just didn't put enough pressure. But yeah, the mass incarceration has it's been crazy. The amount of us that are in jail, I'm lucky that I've never been to prison. I feel grateful. Yeah, I've never been a part of that, but a lot of us can't say the same, and it's really sad. Children get affected so much. Have you had to experience in some of the protests you've had, or been a part of, or organized? Have you experienced? I'm sure you have. People getting arrested on site, maybe having to try to help people like that who have been arrested, maybe specifically, I would say fathers that you may know or not know or found out about during that time. Have you experienced that?
Well, I mean, in Boston, there's a group called the Massachusetts Bail Fund, and they've more or less taken the lead to help bail folks out during protests. But up until just this more recent period, right after George Floyd was killed, we called the first protests in the city, and we had never had anybody arrested in any of our previous protests. Part of it is, there are certain activists that have, a more confrontational approach.
Right.
Like we try to instruct a crowd that we're actually not out there really protesting the police per se. We're protesting the whole system.
Yeah. Right.
And also that, you know, for one, like, you know, if a police officer kills someone, it's not the police that are going to hold that cop accountable. It's the DA, you know. So
Right.
number one, to focus on the police, you know, station is not really where the power lies that's going to have the decision to do anything about that cop.
Mm-hmm.
So those are basic things, but also just a protest isn't necessarily simply that, you know. A
Right.
lot of times we use it to outreach to the community, you know what I'm saying, to show unity. So we'll march in the hood, you know, away from the government buildings, you know, just through the neighborhoods. And those
Right.
are some of the best ones, you know, the best marches we have, because, you know, people really appreciate that. And they come out of their houses, people will join in, you know, because, you know, it's a deep sentiment out there. You know, to me, it's still kind of unorganized, and there's been major attempts to co-opt it
Mm.
ever since the Ferguson uprising. You know, this
Right.
George Floyd thing took everyone by surprise. So they've had not as much control as not as much ability to try to corral the thing back as they did before. I think, you know, we'll see. You know, a
Right.
lot of things got sucked into the elections,
Mm-hmm.
but it was never about Trump. You know, a lot of people equate the two. You know, but this protest started during the Obama administration. You know, before Trump ever declared he was running for office. And
Right.
it's
That's
been
very
about
true.
the government, the system, both parties. You know, so
Right.
as much as, you know, they try to make it a partisan issue, um, it's so much deeper than that. So
Yeah, it really
to
is.
me, that's the one interesting thing about it. That's why, to me, the mass movement represents almost like a third party in the mainstream politics. It
Mm.
just hasn't been articulated yet, you know,
Yeah.
into like an organization.
Mm. No, I hear that. Um, yeah, I definitely appreciate all the awareness that you and the organizations you work with have brought to these situations. I follow you on Facebook. I have been for a while. I've tried to make it to a few of the protests over the years. Probably made it to about one or two. Even some of the court hearings that you've been a part of. I think the last time I saw you, I don't remember exactly who this was for, but you were at a court hearing in support of one of the mothers, because, you know, obviously, as I was saying, this really affects families so much when all this stuff happens, imprisonment, murder, um, and I did try to catch that hearing, but I made it at the end. But I saw you come out, and it's just nice to see a familiar face in places like that. You know, when you know, you're out there fighting the good fight or trying to fight the good fight. Um, it's just good to see people that you know you can rely on. So I really appreciate the service. You know, almost like a military person, I appreciate the service that you've given us. You know,
Yeah,
really.
man,
Um,
definitely feels like it out here, man. It's definitely a war
yeah,
for hearts and minds, and
I do want to.
I do it because, you know, uh, others, you know, taught me. You know, I'm just
Mhm.
passing on what they taught me. You know.
Right. I grew up with like watching. I'm from Philadelphia, so I grew up watching the
Mhm.
protests for Mumia Abu
Yeah.
Jamal. So I grew up seeing that like every year, pretty much there was some kind of march to City Hall, and like that right there, like I don't know what was going on in Boston, but that right there just made me very aware that things were not right, you know, in the place that I'm at, and
Right. Right.
that's how you know, like when you grow up seeing things like that, that's how you know you instantly know that there's something going on in this country that people don't really talk about, and it creates an uprising that forces people to have to get out on their feet and get out on the streets and you know, march.
Right. Right. No, they do. They've been doing a great job keeping that
keeping it going.
this case out there.
Yeah,
I've been
no doubt.
to several of those demonstrations in Philly myself.
Hmm.
Actually, my band, we performed at a few MAAPB events in Philly.
Oh, really?
So we know Pam
In
Africa.
Africa and the Move
Yeah.
organization. Hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know, man. They just had a pretty much an uprising there, a few weeks
Yeah,
back with
I know from Walter
Walter
Wallace.
Wallace. Yeah, we haven't really been in contact with them, but
Mm.
we plan to be. I'm not really sure. That situation's still live too. I mean,
Yeah,
none of these questions are resolved. It all got overshadowed by the
the election.
presidential election. But
Yeah, even COVID couldn't overshadow it, but the elections definitely did. They tried to overshadow with COVID. Talking about how people were in such close vicinities and how this is kind of counterproductive, but there's just no way to predict when a movement will happen. So it is what it is.
yeah, man. I mean, shit, we didn't see it coming. I know I didn't see it coming.
Right.
I mean,
Like you were saying, it was people who have been doing this kind of work for years. This was just kind of the catalyst that was needed to bring everything back to the forefront.
yeah, I mean, we had been, we were part of the upsurge after Mike Brown, so
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what got me back in the streets again, really, as an organizer.
Mm.
So I kind of had taken a step back from that. But towards, by that time, by whatever, early 2020, pre-COVID,
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't too much going on, nationally. We had just been, as a group, because we were working with a couple families. That's basically what kept us functioning as an organization. A couple local families who had lost loved ones to the Boston police, and
Right.
just trying to help them.
Stuff that's not really on like a national scale that I've noticed.
Yeah, so we've been trying to connect them to other families across the country, and I went to Ferguson with Hope Coleman, who's the mother of Terrence Coleman. He's basically the last. I mean, he wasn't the last person killed by the Boston police, but the last really fight around a case in the city. Now it's over 4 years old.
Okay.
But we went out there in support of the Mike Brown family because, we had invited them to the city back in 2017.
Mm.
They had met Hope, and they invited us to come out there. And but by that time, there was no protests. It was just the families basically,
Right.
and a few activists from a few different cities that were really organizing protests or anything public around the issue.
Yeah.
And then,
Have
George
you,
Floyd. Well, it wasn't just George Floyd though. It was the Arbery case,
Ahmaud, yeah.
which really kind of got a lot of people aroused, at least out here for us. We were considering calling a protest then, but that was also when COVID restrictions just kind of started to hit,
Yeah.
and we were just negotiating,
Mm-hmm.
uncharted territory. So there was also a case we were watching in Indianapolis where they had killed 3 people in 24 hours,
Wow.
including this one brother on Facebook Live,
Really?
John Reed. And we knew some of the people in Indianapolis, and they called protests. They called a street protest in Indianapolis, And they did something kind of locally. It had some little echoes nationally around the Arbery case. So it was like, okay, they're doing the stuff locally. And that was George Floyd, and it was like, oh hell no, we can't protest. You know? And by that time, you know, everything had spilled over nationally too. So, but we were a part of it here. So, and yeah, this time around, I mean, that's a whole other can of worms. But I'll just say, you know, we're just starting on a higher plane, you know, and because we've been able to do stuff, you know, we couldn't have ever imagined doing just months ago. But even so, it's still a drop in the bucket, you know. There's so much more to do. So.
Right, that's true. How is it? How is it with you know, bringing awareness to your child, to your son? You know, with all this going on, you know, it seems like it was kind of a domino effect. As you're saying, like it was first Ahmaud Arbery, and you said you were following another case as well in Indianapolis, or 3 cases, I should say, and then George Floyd, then Breonna Taylor. I don't want to mess up his name, but the gentleman who was in the Wendy's parking lot, he was a father of like, he was a father of many kids, which they didn't really talk about. There was also, and then Walter Wallace. There's been a few cases that, you know, have been somewhat overshadowed by Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, but still prevalent in the media. How do you?
Blake and Kenosha.
Yes. Yeah. How do you like, you know, speak to your son about things like this?
For the most part, you know, I mean, we're not trying to talk about every case or anything, but just the issue in general. Like, you know, he kind of grew up around protests. Like literally his first sentence was "We can't breathe."
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Wow. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's really interesting.
You know, it's definitely a story.
Yeah, it's a story, definitely.
But I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, man. It's really hard to say. You know, I just try to keep it light. I try to keep everything light, you know.
Do you feel he understands, like, what's going on?
Yeah, well, just the idea that the police aren't, you know, the good guy is not, you know, is something that, you know, is an idea that he had in his head much earlier than I did.
I believe that.
But at the same time, you know, yeah, I just want to have a balanced, you know,
right?
Not just fear the police when he sees them, or want to, like, you know,
run or do something crazy.
FTP, you know. So
right, yeah, we don't need that. Why?
But you know,
yeah, it's
I don't know. I can't say. It's too early to tell how this is affecting the generation, because it's so much, man. So
really
much
is
going on. I think one thing that concerns me is just, you know, I think it has the potential to dim their hopes, you know, of a future, you know, because I think it might happen to them, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's true. That's the sad part, I would say.
And I don't want them to live in fear, you know.
Right.
I mean, I don't live in fear. I mean, I'm, you know, you know, anything can happen in one's life. So, but I don't live in fear of the police attacking me at at all times of the day. But
yeah,
at
sometimes.
the same time, you know, it's good to have, you know,
awareness,
to know your whereabouts. You know?
Yeah.
The main thing is, you know, I feel like our best defense from, like, a totalitarian state or something like that, where there's no democratic rights, and can't freely express our views. It's just is the protest movement, is solidarity, is just standing up and speaking out collectively. So
Right.
so
Who are these?
sometimes your best defense is a good offense, you know.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good saying. Who are these kids in your profile picture here? Do you know these kids, or is it like a stock photo?
Oh, my bad. Is that what's showing?
Oh yeah, no problem. But I was
You
wondering.
see me now?
I see you now. Yeah. But
Um,
are they kids you know?
yeah, that's an interesting story, man. Those are kids. I don't know what they're doing now, and they're probably 6 years older now. At least that's about a 6-year-old picture.
Okay.
But they're just kids from Roxbury.
Okay.
That was taken during our first protest that we called with the group that we formed,
Mm.
and that was in the spring of 2015. And
Okay.
it was really the first protest that went into the hood as to opposed to downtown during
Okay.
the Mike Brown era.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big debate around this that you know, people were questioning, you know, who said we could do it, or like we shouldn't do it, or you know, if we do it, you know, like people will shoot each other. It was some wild
Wow.
shit. It's coming from activists, some so-called black activists.
People still have those misconceptions. Like it's I tell people all the
I know.
time, like most people in, in the hood are just trying to live their life every day and just, pay their bills and get through the day. And a few bad apples always make the hood seem like it's the worst thing in the world. And you got people like that saying, oh, you're going to get shot if you walk through the hood. Like I walk through, growing up in Philly, I walk through dangerous hoods all the time. And as long as you just know how to keep your head up and, know that look like you know where you're going, people leave you alone. And most people in general are just going to leave you alone.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty much true.
Yeah. That's just crazy. People think like that still. I don't know.
So anyways, yeah, we went up Warren Street. That was on Warren Street. So that was kind of symbolic of the reaction we were getting all across the street. People coming out on their stoops, you know, lining up street, stopping their car, getting out of their car, joining the march. I mean,
yeah,
it was complete refutation of every naysayer that said, you know, we shouldn't, we couldn't, you know, we can't.
right.
And it just showed, the people want this, you know. The people actually have been excluded from this because not everybody's going downtown, you know.
Right. Yeah, because once the
So
protest starts, it's going to be hard to get downtown. So it's best to bring it to them.
right. So anyways, that's where that picture comes from. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. So what are some of like the what would you say some of the positive things are as far as children being aware of like the uprisings and police brutality and just helping to stop prosecutors from doing the wrong thing? What would you say some of the positive things are that children can take from it, or even people in general?
I just think, you know, for children, I think they're going to learn a little bit more of a healthy sense of rebellion. I mean, I definitely feel like, you know, previous generations, especially post 60s, you know, have been relatively tame, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is a healthy, you know, that's part of the thing that gave me hope in this country. Show me that, you know,
Yeah.
that you know, people would stand up and call things for what they were, and they wouldn't settle, they wouldn't compromise. And you know, if that's emblematic of a generation. I hope, you know, that seed, you know, is planted into, you know, the coming generations, you know, that, you know, you don't have to go along with the show, you know, you can challenge it. And if necessary, you can completely change it. Because, you know, the show is just the show. There's things that are more important than the show, and basic human values, you know.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, you know. I think they'll do all right, you know, as long as we stay a part of the journey, you know, and help pass on the tools, man. But
Yeah, the
I
parents
mean,
have
we're
to be
going
there.
through unprecedented times where it ain't necessarily a blueprint, you know. I think, you know, if anything, we all have to learn how to innovate and to improvise, you know.
Right.
If anything, that's what this generation's learning, how to improvise, you know, with COVID and school and everything, man.
Yeah,
People
that's
learn
very
how to
true.
make new and invent. And to me, I think that's going to be the thing. Basically, the hustle. You got to learn how to hustle, man.
Yeah, I think these kids today have a better idea of how to hustle with from multiple angles than probably previous generations did. They have a lot more opportunity to hustle because there's more access to the world.
Oh yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine being a kid right now, man.
Yeah,
I
literally
mean,
a candy store.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's part of the danger too, you know. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say, you know, you just gotta. I would just preach for the parents' vigilance, man. You gotta just be. You gotta get inside your kid's head, man.
Yes.
I think that's the most important thing, you know, as a parent, is to establish that connection. If you can do that, then it's kind of like the lifelong dialogue that you know, that you sparked, which is going to be basically your relationship with your kid, you know, and
Right.
it's what they're going to get from you. That's the most important thing you can give them, is that connection, I think. And everything else is just, you know, a prerequisite or whatever, like, you know, food, clothing, shelter. But if you don't get inside your kid's head, you know, you can go about your day or whatever, because you got things going on in your life, and you can easily lose track of, you know, this little human right beside you going through their own
little thing.
intense experience, you know.
Seriously, yeah.
So I think it's important to really check in with your kid as much as possible, and just make sure you're on a certain wavelength, you know.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
plus, I mean, you're gonna notice your kids growing and developing, so you know they just keep evolving, man. And, you know, you gotta
every single day.
Yeah, you gotta adapt with it too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out, maybe you need to talk to them in a different manner, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely a learning experience every single day. Like my son's 3, so I got a long way to go, even to get to 7. But
Yeah.
but I see, how much me and his mom, me and my wife, how much we're in him and a part of him. But he has a lot of different influences out there, from daycare to other kids, to other parents. So I feel like it's definitely important. That's always in the back of my mind, like making sure that he knows who we are, and making sure he knows, make sure that he just has that kind of little voice in his head. I remember growing up, I always had my mom's little voice in my head telling me when I was doing something wrong. What would she say if I do this? What would she say if I do that? So I hope that, our son has kind of that same little voice from both of us. Maybe not as loud, but but it's still, a voice that, the voice of reason, I should say.
That's the one thing, I don't know about other parents, but definitely my parenting style is different than the way that I was parented. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
at the same time, I've taken a lot of things from my parents. I give them, you know, credit where it's due, but and you know, just in some cases, I don't know necessarily. Maybe I should be more like them, you know. But I kind of err on the side of being probably too lenient, you know, with my kid, you know, in terms of not being a super disciplinarian,
Okay.
but trying to reason with the kid.
Yeah.
But or, you know, just try to explain. I never liked being ordered around as a kid, so I
Okay.
try not to order my kid around. You know? I try to motivate him.
Right.
And for the most part, you know, I guess his mom more than picks up the slack for the two of us. So
That's a good thing.
he likes to do it, you know. But he'll do things for me without me having to, you know, order him around, you know.
That's good. When they start doing that, that's when you know you did something right so far.
Yeah, man.
Definitely.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
How's it going with the virtual school? Is that something like, is it tough to? Because a lot of parents are struggling with that.
Yeah. Well, they got the way they got it now. He's doing good, but when it first happened, it was, oh my God,
Can't
horrific,
imagine.
man. Because we just weren't prepared. You know, I wasn't prepared. Because you think like, okay, he's at school, but you kind of have to be like on hand, almost doing it
Yeah,
with him, almost, you know.
that's what I've been hearing.
So that, you know, just wasn't working. But now the system he's on now seems to be working well, because partly, I don't know, they have enough games and stuff on there where it's like it's like he's playing his iPad, you know what I'm saying? And that's like his second home, man. He's very comfortable on the iPad, man. So I guess he's more or less technically savvy to do it, you know what I'm saying? So we don't have to set it up now. He can run the Zoom, everything. I'm like, God damn.
Oh wow, he's doing
So,
better than some of these 65-year-olds out here.
you know.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, he's doing good with it right now, but in general, because he's the only child, you know, that's really, you know, a big part of why we want him, you know, to go to school is for just the social development with his peer group. You know?
Right. Yeah. No, that makes the most sense. It's tough. My son's in daycare, and you know, he for the first like 4 months of COVID, there was no daycare, so that was tough. You know, even though we were working from home, we were still working, so it's tough to watch your kid while, you know, especially a 3-year-old and a boy who has crazy energy. It's definitely tough to keep your eye on him at all times. So we had some help from my mother-in-law, which is lucky. But even like just going to daycare, I don't know, just having to navigate everything has definitely been tough. But right now, daycare is back and things are kind of back to normal on that end. So it's been pretty helpful, I would say. Because without that, we might have to cut back on the amount of work that we're doing, or hire like a full-time babysitter, which I don't know how people can afford that.
Yeah, it's rough, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's one thing, you know, it's really good to have extended family, but we don't really have that luxury here right now. But
Oh, we had to fly her in. Definitely.
makes a big difference, you know, for sure.
Yeah.
Because there you got, you know, a willing babysitter that doesn't necessarily need to be paid, but
right.
And it's such a good thing for both of them. Like if you have a grandparent, you know, they can't get enough of their grandchildren for the most part.
Right.
And it's definitely, you want to establish that connection with your kid with their, their ancestors or whatnot. So
Definitely. On that note,
that's one thing. We just had a great grandmother who passed, so that was,
oh, I'm sorry to hear that. My condolences.
Just dealing with the question of death. So I mean, that's kind of related to this question of the police. That's why I raised it. But just yeah, I think these things make kids think of death more soon. Put it like that.
Yeah, that's true. My son luckily got to meet his great grandfather right before he passed.
Oh, that's awesome.
Definitely, yeah. That's like time. That's a lot of experience that he got to, even touch as a baby. I think the last time he saw him, he was around 2. But yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing to be able to go that far back in the generations. Even if he probably didn't, have time to learn too much, and maybe he won't really remember, but just the fact that they got to touch each other, I think is a special thing.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you really appreciate that the older you get, man.
Definitely. Family. So one thing I've been doing is at the end of every podcast, I've been doing Black Fatherhood Quote of the Week.
Okay.
And so the one I found for this week, or whenever this airs, is kind of connected to lineage and our ancestors. It's supposedly an African proverb, but it goes like, so if you know his father and you know his grandfather, then you don't worry about his son. And I kind of like that. I think that's it's like deep but not deep. It's like saying that if you already know the men behind him, you kind of know how he was raised, and so you probably shouldn't have to wonder who he is or who he may become, even though you don't always know what kids will turn out to be, but you have an idea of the foundation of where they came from. That's what I take from it. I don't know what you take from it, but
I mean, I think that's true. I think that's true in a lot of different ways, but in my case, like, I never knew my father, my biological father, but at least as a kid, later on in life, I learned about him.
Okay.
As I met some of my other siblings. I had other siblings who knew him, and then
right.
but I had a father growing up, so I definitely take after. Actually, I take after both. Things
Right.
I've learned and things that are just must be genetic. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of interesting. But when I think of my kid, and what he'll, because he definitely has a lot of my traits, just
Right.
personality-wise, but of course physically as well. But
Right.
so
it's always funny to see the traits that they take.
I don't know, man. But either way, yeah, from that quote, that I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. I mean, tradition is big, man. I mean, a lot of the tools we carry with us through life are things that, are instilled in us, in an early age. So, and even throughout life, hopefully if you're blessed, you'll have a father or at least a parent, someone of the older generation that can help guide you along the way. Because I mean, there's a lot of road bumps along the way past 18,
Oh yeah.
That but anyways, all that is a big part of your identity. So
Do you feel?
Yeah, I definitely believe that.
So you feel that if people look at you, they know where your son comes from. If people who know you, if they know you, then they kind of wouldn't have to worry about your son. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It depends on worry. Like my mom worries about me all the time, so
Okay. Yeah.
there's different kinds of worry. But
Definitely, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
You know, in some ways, I'm worried about my son in that for that reason. You know, that I know
You're
he's
worried
gonna
that
be
you're gonna.
passionate, very passionate kid. You know.
Are you worried that you're going to continue to worry about him no matter how old he is? Is that your concern?
Oh well. No, I'm not concerned about that. But I do know that. I mean, it's just gonna
Yeah.
be. That's just a fact, you know.
Right. That's true.
I mean, it's just like you're worried about, you know, whether your limbs are attached to your torso, you know.
Yeah. I hear that.
So you're gonna always be checking for them,
Definitely.
making sure they're good. But no, I mean, you know, you're at the point where you almost have to be around them, your son, in every room he's in, you know.
Almost. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much.
So
You know.
I don't have to worry about my kid in the next room at this point. You know, it's gonna go on, you know, and it progresses from there. But
I can't wait,
it's
man. I
great.
can't wait.
You know, we're still negotiating those boundaries. He wants to know when, you know, he can go to the store on his own to buy something. You know,
Oh
so
man,
I don't know. I don't
that's a
know
scary
about
one.
that.
That's a scary one, man. I had to
Can he
sneak to
cross
do
the
that one.
street by himself? Those kind of things.
Right. When I was a kid, I had to sneak to do that. You know, you couldn't go around the corner with the neighborhood kids because you had to be in the line of sight. I don't know if I'm going to continue that tradition, but probably will. And like,
Right.
but
That's
yeah,
a
going
good.
to
That's a good rule, Tom.
yeah. I just I don't know. I hate seeing like little kids in the street by themselves, like waiting for school buses or waiting for the train.
Yes, a lot of that.
It's too much of that. Mostly, I see it in the Black community. I really don't see it in other communities too much when I drive through. You know, you don't see kids waiting on the street corner for a bus too much. You know, they're getting dropped off, or like they're coming out the house at the same exact time the bus is there. You know, all the stuff, and like I see in, you know, Dorchester, Roxbury, just little kids like taking the train by themselves, and it's just so weird with the way I grew up. I grew up with a lot of warnings like about people in general, no matter what the gender is, just to watch out for people and how weird they can be, and how you know they can just do things that you wouldn't expect, especially when it comes to kids. So
Right.
it just worries me a lot when I see kids that young. So, you know, I would say, you know, I don't have a 7-year-old, but you know, from experience, take your time, man. Take your time with letting him
Oh yeah,
have that kind of
we're not
freedom.
rushing that one.
Yeah, definitely no rush. I don't even like let my
I
kid
mean,
walk
I
down the
didn't grow
street.
up in the city. You know, I grew up in a different time, so you know, I was definitely going to the store on my own by the same time as his age. But he's in a different era now.
Definitely. And so as we close things out, is there anything that you want to let the people know? You want to put out any social media and promote your social media, or anything you have coming up? Any things you have with mass action against police brutality? Anything you have going on?
Well, I guess pending weather, I will probably be performing this Saturday the 19th,
Okay.
Boston Commons, for this basically a fundraising event, kind of a mutual aid event, and
Okay.
fundraise for a bunch of different groups. And then
That's great.
for mass action against police brutality, it's going to be a march on MLK Day,
Okay.
January 18th. So that's, you know, a month from now, but it'll be coming up. And, you know, there may be other things that pop up in between, but right now, plus we have a podcast going. That's one thing.
Okay. What's that podcast?
Well, we call it the Mass Action Podcast. But you just go to the Mass Action website, MAAPB.org.
MAAPB.org.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can should be able to get to previous episodes, but we got some interesting content, man. That's we're getting better at producing the show. So
Yeah, it's
but,
definitely
it's just a lot.
work.
Yeah, it's a commitment. So
It really is.
we got a lot of other things going on. So it's just a matter of figuring out our what's a good schedule for us to maintain. But right now we're just kind of doing them whenever we can get them out.
Okay.
So
I thought about doing that, but now I'm doing it weekly so far, which is
yeah, I think that's probably a better practice, because
Yeah.
over time it'll pay off.
Right.
It may
That
not pay off.
consistency.
Yeah, and then people who dig the show, they're gonna go back and look at the old episodes.
Right. That's what I do with all my podcasts I watch. So I would hope.
That's great. Any podcast that I get into, I'll go back and look at the old episodes.
Mm-hmm.
If I find a podcast that I like.
Right.
For
Definitely.
Sure.
When did you guys start the podcast?
We tried to start a couple of years ago, but really we kind of relaunched it right around early June.
Okay.
So we've probably done about maybe 8 or 9 episodes.
That's great.
And, we got a couple more. We see there needs to be kind of like a CNN for the movement, and
right.
Trying to kind of help fill that vacuum, but kind of narrowly focused on mainly the police brutality issues and just the related issues around it, the protests and whatever related questions.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has a voice, so it's great that you guys are putting that out there. And, you guys have had a voice in the streets for a long time. So it's good that you're getting it out there, I would say on a global scale now that you're on the internet.
Yeah, globally. Man, that's the other thing. What's happening in Nigeria today is amazing,
SARS is what they're saying, right?
Yeah.
I don't know much about that. I told myself to look it up, but I didn't research it too much. I see it everywhere. I see even artists coming out with songs like that, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, the details aren't really super important, other than that's just a special armed robbery unit of the Nigerian police that's especially hated. But in general, though, just the police in general in Nigeria are hated and very corrupt. So I think that's why it's having such a gain in traction. But then it kind of had a real watershed because there was, a massacre that took place in Lagos in October, where the military gunned down about 17 students, or they weren't all students, but just youth, unarmed youth.
Right.
And then that led to just massive protests across the country, including the raiding of different warehouses that were holding foodstuffs, that were supposed to be distributed for COVID. So it's just turned into an anti-government protest, not just a protest against the police,
Right.
But in Nigeria, Nigeria's got a history of civil war. So this is an interesting thing, though. It's cutting across ethnic lines. So in all these wars, the civil wars were fought across ethnic lines.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting, it's a new phenomena, still unfolding. I don't know. I have family there. I hope to go back, check it out firsthand, but we'll see what happens, what the future holds here. But in any case, we'll probably try to see if we can, do a show dedicated to that.
That would be great. I'll definitely tune in for that.
Yeah. But definitely, Nigeria's a powder keg, man, so I'm not surprised that we're seeing that. But it's kind of interesting how it kind of was somewhat inspired by what was happening here.
Right.
But I don't know what I don't know what to make of or what to predict in Nigeria, but there's definitely a political crisis that is intensified. You know.
Hmm. How did you find out about your connection to home in Nigeria? Was it from birth?
Well, it's when I finally tracked down who I knew I was Nigerian. I didn't know my father, and then I tracked him down years later, or at least it got his name. I never met him because he had already passed by the time
Mm.
I was looking for him. But what I found was what turned out to be my brother.
Okay.
So it's through him that, you know, I got connected to the family back in Nigeria. So eventually I met my grandfather.
Wow. Okay.
And he eventually passed away, but
But you met him.
I met him about 3-4 years before he died.
Wow.
And yeah, cool. That's it. He gave me my name, my Igbo name, Nkume. So,
Okay. So you are Igbo, not Yoruba.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. That's interesting. In my family, we definitely have ties to Nigeria and Yoruba culture, but it's interesting. This is my my second interview, and you're also the second person I have connected to Nigeria. So I'm loving this trend that I'm on right now.
Well, man, shit, Nigeria, you know, it's the China of the diaspora. Man.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it. Yeah, definitely.
That's the one thing why anything in Nigeria is significant. You know, to me, any political development is of worldwide significance, because just just how deeply Nigeria is, you know, reflected throughout the diaspora, but also just numerically in Africa on the continent itself. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think it represents 1/4 of the population on the continent. You know, right
Really?
in that region. Yeah.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah. So it's by far the most populous country in Africa.
Right. Which would explain, I would say, probably the explosion of culture that's kind of reached over to the U.S. now, even just with music and dress. I would say, just like people feeling more comfortable wearing certain clothing, and then the acceptance of Afro beats and the descendants of Fela Kuti and things like that. Just how that whole thing evolved. People are more accepting of Nigerian culture now, which it's just interesting to see that change. Even just for me as a musician, as a DJ, it's interesting to see that change.
Plus, I mean, you have a massive Nigerian American population here in the States. I think it's at least 1 million.
Wow. So we need a little
Exactly,
Nigeria
but
somewhere.
it's one of the biggest. It is the biggest African immigrant population.
Okay.
But I mean, that makes sense. It's the biggest country, so it's
Right.
kind of like China is to Asia. You know?
Right. There's a Chinatown everywhere, but there's not a little Nigeria everywhere. So we got to work on that.
Damn, they're damn near close. So
Yeah.
getting there.
Right. Got to name it.
Yeah, man. Just people gotta open up. You know, I need to find a place to get a goosey soup, man, in every town.
Yeah, I hear that.
But I'm just glad we have at least one in this city. So
Definitely.
I really appreciate you having me, and
No problem.
yeah,
I appreciate
man.
you coming on.
Fatherhood is a beautiful thing. It's a blessing, man. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. I didn't know what to expect either, but
Right. But here you are.
I guess the one thing I would just recommend is, you know, well, there's another fatherhood quote I've heard. Maybe you've already heard this one, but basically, you do not become a man until you become a father. You heard that one?
I haven't heard that one actually. I like that one.
Something to think about, though.
Write that one down. You know who said that?
I don't know. It was like a friend of mine's father said it, something like that. I don't know. I think that's how it came to me.
Good enough.
Yeah.
Nice. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate you coming on and blessing the podcast with your presence. It's definitely a beautiful thing. And, you know, I'm sure we'll connect again. And I'm going to check out your podcast and check out our trial for. Yeah, definitely. And I'll make sure to, you know, put the links in the description and all that when this is posted.
That's where the music is.
Okay.
If it's not
social media
right now, we'll get it back up. But and the social media, Bojah 100 on Instagram and Bojah and the Insurrection on Facebook.
Okay. Perfect.
And if you want to check out Mass Action, MAAPB01E06 on all the platforms.
Got it. Perfect, man. Well, again, it was a pleasure. And yeah, we'll hope to see you again one day. Yeah,
man. Take care, man. Stay safe out there.
You too, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Peace out now.
What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted.
Black fatherhood, my kind of hood.